Hello, I'm Matt Frawley, and this is Mathey Talks. And today I have the great pleasure of talking with Calvin Chin, who is the Director of Counseling and Psychological Services, CPS, here at Princeton University. So I guess the most appropriate question is, how do you feel about being Director of CPS?
I feel good.
Feel
I think
good?
it's a good place, you know. I think one of the things that I always sort of tell people when they ask me about my job is just how great it is to sort of work with the students. Like the students really make the job, because I'm sure that you sort of feel the same way. Students are they're so different, right? They come from all different kinds of places. They have so many different kinds of stories. But I think one of the things that they share is that they, certainly are smart, but they're motivated, and that they have something that has enabled them to sort of get to this place, to get into Princeton, and it's a real joy, I think, to sort of to work with them and to get to know them and to hear their stories and to learn from them, and so that's the thing that I think is probably the best part of my job. I also love, my colleagues. I think that, the people that I work with are incredibly talented and are really motivated to just do the best that they can to sort of help support students, and that feels good to me. It feels like a nice place to come to work every day.
So before we talk more about just your time here at Princeton, tell us about how you got to Princeton. How did you get interested in psychology, and where were you before, and just give us some background.
Sure. So, I've always been interested in, I think, psychology, even like in high school. I think it comes from sort of growing up. I was born here, but my parents are immigrants from China, and so I grew up in like a mostly white sort of suburb of DC, and I think that sort of the experience of kind of being different sort of makes you more attuned to sort of others, and just makes you more attuned to sort of to paying attention about sort of like how others are thinking, how others are feeling, like what different people's motivations are. And so I think from an early point in my life, I've always sort of just been curious about that, and been sort of fascinated by how people sort of think and feel. And so I ended up going to University of Michigan, and
Undergraduate?
Undergraduate. And I was originally thinking about becoming like a pre-med, and was enrolled, I think, in like a intro to psych class and like an organic chemistry class. And like my first day of organic chemistry, they went over sort of all the things that we were supposed to know at that point, and I dropped it like like within hours of attending the class, and ended up loving my psychology class, and so knew really early on that this was going to be the field that I was going to pursue. So I majored in psychology, went immediately to graduate school.
And where'd you go to grad school?
I went to NYU. And it was a great time. It was a great program, and and I had no idea that I was actually going to end up in college mental health and work for a counseling service. But after you do sort of an internship, in order to get licensed, you have to do some postdoctoral time, and so one of the fellowship opportunities I applied to was at Columbia's counseling service, their student counseling service, and so I applied. I heard really good things about it. I got accepted, I did it, and that's where, I kind of discovered this is kind of a really great place for a psychologist to work. So I did a year fellowship there. I ended up getting hired on a staff. I ended up spending about 10 years at Columbia at their counseling service, and, I moved up. I ended up being assistant director there, and then I left Columbia and was director at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, their counseling service, for about 3 years before I found out about the opportunity here at Princeton. And I just started at Princeton in October of 2013.
Right, so you're about a year and a half now.
Yeah.
All right. So when you arrived here, you were at Columbia, which is very similar to Princeton. Did anything surprise you, or just when you started here?
Well, it's funny. This is going to sound kind of silly, but one thing that I was really pleasantly surprised by was how polite all the students were. I remember being struck by that, even during the interview process, you know, because you're supposed to report to a certain building, and you know the campus is pretty confusing if you don't know it, and so I would just go to any random student and just sort of say, you know, I'm looking for, you know, Makash, and will never forget this. Like a student, you know, who I asked this question to was like, oh yeah, and here, let me just walk you, and escorted me, you know, this sort of stranger to, you know, to my interview, you know, which was so nice, and I felt that sense. I mean, there's like I don't know if it's politeness or a friendliness or just like a willingness to want to sort of be kind that I think is really lovely about the place. And so that was nice. I mean, I'm not saying that it wasn't that way in John Jay or Columbia, but it was in New York, so it's a little bit of a different kind of edge. Yeah, I mean, the campus is beautiful. You know, that's the other thing that, you know, that I knew, but I guess I wasn't as prepared to sort of encounter every day, you know, just to sort of see, just to be grateful for how beautiful it is to sort of walk around in this place, you know. I think the other thing that, you know, I don't know if it was a surprise, but was pleasant for me to sort of experience again was just everyone that I worked with, like all of the people that work here, I think, like they're in a pretty good mood, like they feel like pretty happy about, you know, the work that they're doing. And that's nice. I mean, I think it says something about the place. I think it says something about, you know, the students. I think it says something about who elects to come work at the university. But it really makes a difference when you feel like people are all aligned for the same thing, right? Like we all sort of have the students' sort of best interests at heart and are really eager to sort of support them in whatever ways we can and to see them grow and change and develop and just get all that they can from this experience, and that's really lovely just to sort of see how many sort of different resources and structures the university has been able to set up to support students in their, you know, development and in their, you know, being able to sort of get everything they can out of their university time.
Cool. So I guess all total, there's been about 15 years, you would say, in college.
It's like my career.
Okay, certain things are going to be the same, but there's certain things, certain developments, trends. What have you noticed over those 15 years?
Well, you know, the thing that I noticed is actually been observed like in the literature and what many college counseling service directors are reporting, which is an increase in sort of the severity of the problems that students bring. I think that this has there's different reasons for this. I think one reason is there are sort of newer and effective treatments, like with the SSRIs, different kinds of medications that allow students who may have suffered from serious depressions or serious anxiety disorders in high school to actually, you know, do well and to be able to make it into college. And so that's sort of a national trend that people are observing, right? And so I think as a result, you know, people who may not have been able to make it to college are making it to college, but are also bringing with them histories of having, you know, more severe and more complicated kinds of problems. So that's certainly a trend that I'm seeing. It's just the sort of the level of severity of the problem and how complicated it can be is increasing over time.
And how, I mean, so obviously that's the challenge of how counseling centers across the country are trying to adapt and provide the best care for these students. I mean, is that going well, or is everyone still adapting and evolving to meet the needs?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think that it's an ongoing challenge.
Right.
I mean, I think one of the things that I hear from my colleagues at different counseling services across the country at different schools is, you know, resources is sometimes, you know, an issue.
Right.
You know, I mean, I think that we're very lucky at Princeton to sort of be at a well-resourced university. So the ratio of sort of counselors to students is actually very good compared to sort of what it is sort of nationally and at other places. So that allows us to sort of work without a wait list. That allows us to not have sort of strict session limits. But, you know, at some other places, it's harder. Like if you have fewer counselors, if you don't have psychiatric services available, it can be a real struggle to sort of serve all the students who may need help and assistance. And you know, and even though you know we are certainly well resourced as compared to you know different universities across the country, you know, we still get very, very busy. You know, we happen to see a large percentage of the university community. So it's about 1,500 students a year, about 20% of the entire university population, student population. Because we see so many students, you know, there are still, you know, times where we'll have to meet people, you know, every other week, you know, instead of weekly. We do work in a short-term framework, and so for students who need, you know, more extended treatments, you know, we make use of the community therapists that are in Princeton. Unfortunately, there are a lot of them. So you know, so that's always an issue, right? We always, I mean, ideally, we would love to be able to see students, you know, weekly, and you know, I mean, like to keep them as long as we can, and all of those different types of things. But it's always a balance between making sure that you're available to all of the students who need access to help.
So what, I've been in Princeton 14, 15 years now, and my impression has been that the anxiety levels or stress levels have risen. Is that in the literature, or have you noticed that in your 15 years at all working? Or maybe it's constant, and that's just my own experience individually with students.
I think it is kind of true. I mean, I think that, you know, it parallels sort of like how incredibly competitive it is to get into college, and how that has just sort of skyrocketed in terms of sort of like, you know, the level of preparation, and like how exceptional you have to be to get into any school, but especially, you know, a school like Princeton, you know. And so I think early on, you know, you hear about, you know, students in high school who are, you know, doing 7 different activities while, you know, earning like a 4.0 GPA, and you know, you know, working, and you know, I mean, like it's the pressure starts early, I think, you know, and I think that carries on. I think that certainly, you know, like around 2008, 2009, I mean, we definitely saw a lot of anxiety around just students in the job market, right? I think the economy is a very real pressure on students, not only on, you know, the parents of students who, you know, may be dealing with job losses and things like that, you know, to be able to pay, but also for students entering the job market, right? Like, and that's a challenge. I think what remains, though, even after we've you know, kind of recovered from sort of the recession, is still there's this intensity around, you know, setting yourself up for the next step, right? For the job that you're going to get after you graduate, you know, and I think that since the pressure starts from the beginning, it's hard to disentangle yourself from that kind of momentum, you know, that like sort of leads you to always be sort of future focused and thinking about, all right, what is the thing that I have to do to set myself up so I can make sure to get a job.
I think you're right, because I think a lot of people think, oh, once I get to college, I can relax, but then, oh, I got to start thinking about internships or all these other, and then the job and so on and so forth. And so you're right, it builds this momentum that just becomes part of their DNA.
Yeah, and it's hard to step out of that, right? Because I think that, you know, the other thing that's true about Princeton is that, you know, these are very ambitious, high-achieving students, right? And so, you know, the norm is to be thoughtful about what internship am I going to do, you know, for the summer after sophomore year, and to apply for, you know, however many placements to try to set themselves up for junior year and then senior year and then beyond, you know, and so I think it's really difficult to even step out of that sort of culture, that, you know, that dynamic, that kind of herd thing where it's sort of like, well, God, I see everybody else working so hard to sort of make this happen, I got to be doing it too, you know, and so, I mean, I would love it if people could take a step back, you know. I would love it if there could be a way to sort of decrease that level of pressure and to see if there is a way to, you know, just to increase the amount of time that people can just reflect, you know, and like think about who they are and what they want to be and what they're doing and what they enjoy and what's
Right.
important to them. And I know that they've been trying to do that, certainly in like career services with like that whole new orientation and Prince and Perspective project,
Right.
which I know that you're one of the founders of that.
That was Alexis Andres. I was a big supporter, but
Big supporter. Sorry about that.
we actually did a talk with Alexis earlier
Okay,
this
great.
year.
So didn't mean to.
That's all right. Just want to give credit where credit's due.
State that.
So,
but yeah, no, I mean, like, so I think that certainly like anxiety is, I mean, that's probably the biggest thing that we see, quite honestly, in the counseling service. Like when we look at the kinds of problems that students present, anxiety is always at the top,
Right.
and then it's depression.
okay. So how do you, I'm sure another obstacle or project, let's say, is to make sure the students are leveraging and using CPS as they should. And I know there's often reluctance to go to CPS. And so whatever misconceptions are out there or hindrances to going to CPS, which ones are you focusing on or wish you could kind of just eliminate right now?
Yeah.
All of them, but here's an opportunity to talk about a few that maybe that really you wish you could dispel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first one and the biggest one, I was talking directly to the camera now, is confidentiality. Like every single visit to the counseling service, we hold confidentiality, incredibly seriously. It's not only like a requirement for licensure, but it's also an integral part of like how we can do this work, right? I mean, people need to feel safe, they need to feel like they have privacy, they need to feel like that they can talk to their counselor without things being shared, without their consent. And so that's why absolutely every student who comes into the counseling service is ensured 100% confidentiality, unless they're, an imminent danger to themselves or they're going to hurt someone else. The only way that we can even share that a student has contacted us, right? Like a parent can call, a dean can call, a MAC can call, and we're not even allowed to sort of confirm that a student has made contact with us unless we have a written, signed consent to enable us to release that information. So, I mean, that's, I think, the biggest one, I think that the other thing that I would just want to sort of reinforce is to not feel like your problems have to get to sort of a very severe point in order to make use of our services. Like that what we found is that the earlier that you come for help, the earlier that you seek out treatment, the more likely it is that treatment is going to be effective,
right.
and the more quickly you'll be able to recover, right? And so it's much easier to help someone who's starting to feel depressed than someone who has felt so depressed and sort of sunk deeper and deeper and deeper to a point where they're not really functioning, right? It's much harder to dig out from that place than it is to sort of intervene when it's first happening, So please make use of us. The other thing to just sort of know is that you have a lot of options too, I mean, so, you can come in, you can meet with a counselor once, you can meet with a counselor, a handful of times. You can come in and say, I don't want to have my mental health services be done on campus. Like, I want to see someone outside, and we will connect you with, we have lists of hundreds of clinicians who practice within walking distance of the university who we can provide referrals to you too. So there are a lot of different options, and never hesitate to reach out for help because there's a lot of different ways that we can assist.
I appreciate that because I know when I talk with students, I'm often saying, let's try to see the signs, early on so that we can get them down to CPS earlier rather than later. Because for a whole host of reasons, for their recovery and also just academic concerns as well. So that's great. Before we go, we're running out of time, but next Wednesday, the 18th, you will be speaking at Mathey College down in the private dining room at noon for one of the Mathey Fellows lunchtime talks. And I scribbled down the title, and Calvin will verify that it's pretty much illegible, and so I'm now going to try to read. It's what do Princeton students say about the health concerns that affect their experience?
That's right. That's right.
I did it.
Yeah, it's very
So
good.
can we get a little teaser?
Yeah,
little trailer?
sure. I mean, basically, I'm just going to go over sort of like what's been happening nationally in terms of sort of college students' reports about sort of their health concerns. And I'm also going to be reporting on some of the data that we have obtained through the National College Health Assessment, which is a survey that we have been administering pretty much every year to students here at Princeton. And it provides a lot of really useful and I think interesting information about the kinds of health issues that impact Princeton students' experience, and also it gives you sort of a sense of like the different kinds of the prevalence rates of different things that students may experience here on campus.
So that's Wednesday, February 18th at Mathey College's private dining room at noon. And I really encourage you all to come, because Calvin is really just a wonderful guy and very, very approachable, I think. So it'd be neat for not only faculty administrators who often come to these talks, but also students as well, just to get to know you. So
yeah, no, I'd love to meet any student who wants to come by and say hello. And that, I mean, not just with the talk. I mean, if you see me and Maddie, please say hello.
Right.
I'd love to say hello to you.
And I don't even know if you still have your bearings here on campus. So like that student when you were interviewing, you might be able to help Calvin
right.
find some other building on campus.
I'm sure there are many other buildings I don't know where they're located. So
anyway, well, I really appreciate. I know how busy you are, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to sit down and have a conversation here on Mathey Talks. And just thank you for your time here at Princeton, and just the wonderful influence you've had on counseling services and the university as a whole.
Oh,
So
thanks
you
so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
That's great.